May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. It doesn't happen very often that Epiphany, the 6th of January, actually falls on a Sunday. We kind of forced it last year. The 5th was close enough. But this year we have a match. And we get to hear about the Magi who made that journey. Sometimes they get called kings, sometimes wise men. If you read the Matthew lesson carefully, you'll notice that Matthew does not give you a number. It could be any number of Magi who show up in Bethlehem. We typically think there were 3 because the gifts that get named are 3. But there could have been more. But what we do know about these people who set out on a journey is that they're wise. Magi, people who know about magic, people who are wise not only in things that we today call smart, but matters of the heart, matters of the world, even gazing up at the stars to understand what's happening in the cosmos. These people that Matthew is describing have a special gift, a charism, wisdom. I'm wondering, have you ever met a wise person? Sat in their presence, listened to them, spoken with them? Think about a wise person that you have known, who has been a part of your life. Maybe it's years ago, maybe it's someone you know today, maybe it's someone who had a huge impact on you, but what was evident to you was their wisdom. What are some of the ways that you know someone is wise? What are the markers, the evidence that someone has wisdom? It's different than being smart. Have you ever met a smart person who's not wise? We know those people. They kind of stick out, don't they? But what about wisdom? What is it that we see when we look at someone, spend time with them, and discover that they are wise? Any thoughts about that person you're thinking of? What makes them wise? Anything you want to share with the rest of the community? Oh, there's a hand in the very back. They're wise. Can you say why are they wise? I couldn't hear it. They know a lot of things. Fantastic. Someone who's wise knows a lot of things. What else have you noticed, Dan? They know a lot of things and they have humility. That mixture, I know some things, but it's not the first thing I present is my wealth of knowledge. There's a kind of humility and willingness, empathy. Wea? They measure their words. Thoughtfulness before you speak. I've said in all 3 services we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And that should be the ratio between speaking and hearing. Louisa? Changed. People who are wise. Can you say a little bit more about that? Oh my gosh, what day is it? What? My sermon's done. Louisa took care of it. You have an epiphany, an experience, and what happens to you? And it changes you. So the wise people that you're thinking of, Louisa, probably have a story to tell that changed them. Yeah. Yeah, with your daughter. Luisa's daughter went to visit the border between the U.S. and Mexico to provide relief for those who are waiting, who are uncertain about their future, who don't have food, clothing, and to do some not only basic services, but to provide opportunity for people to become married, to have more paperwork, to help them find a home. That's definitely a life-changing experience. So wise people that you know, and wise people that are all around us, and there might even be a few in the pews. I've met some of you. There's a lot of wisdom in this room. Wise people have these characteristics that allow them to know what they know and what they don't know. Allow them to be changed. Allow them to be humble about the gifts that they bring. Allow them to listen, to know things, but also to be willing to journey and search and look for what I don't know. And Matthew gives us this story. He's the only gospel that gives us a story of the Magi, the wise ones who come journeying from the east. And the way they know that they need to go on a journey is because something has changed. Something in the universe has changed. They have seen it. And it's not anything that they can immediately put their finger on. They saw a star rising in the east. If someone came to you and said, I have seen a star, I need to go on a very long journey. Are you coming with me? You might say, I think you're crazy. Or if you know that person, oh, there is some wisdom in this journey that you are about to undertake. Just a moment, let me check my calendar. Yep, clear it all off, let's go. And so they begin on this journey. They don't have GPS. They don't know where they're headed. They're using stars as a map. Have you ever tried to walk and actually reach a star? They just keep going. You keep walking. It's a long journey. They leave the comfort of their own hometown. They leave the place where they are probably respected and treated with some measure of comfort and predictability, and they go out on a journey to find what they don't know, to seek what is missing, to go and discover what is it that the whole world is on fire about. With this star that has appeared in the sky, something miraculous has happened. We are ignorant of it, and we need to go and discover it. Wise people know what they don't know, and then they go looking for it and change their whole lives, open up everything in order to find it. And so these magi go off on this journey. They make it all the way into Jerusalem, and they're kind of like, I think this is the vicinity, but I'm a little bit lost. Hey, let's ask somebody for directions. That's a wise thing to do. So they go and knock on the door of the one who ought to know something, the king of the realm. It was kind of a mistake, but they knock on Herod's door, and Herod says, a king? What? There's something going on? Herod is not wise, in case you hadn't noticed. Herod isn't even really smart. He's clever. He knows how to manipulate power. And when he has these kings on his doorstep, these wise guys, these ones who are looking for something that is about to change the whole world, he says, just a minute. Have you guys heard anything about a babe to be born in the region? Is there anything I should know? Because there's some wise dudes on my doorstep. And he asks those who are priests and scribes and who've studied this stuff, and they give him some prophecy, and he comes back out and he tells them what he's learned. And then he does this duplicitous thing. This is how the wise men are tipped off. When you find that baby, you come back and tell me where that baby is, because I want to go and worship. Wise people are able to notice when words don't match the heart of the one who spoke them. Wise people are good at discerning duplicitousness, or when there's an incongruity in the behavior and the interior heart of the person who says it. And so even though Matthew tells us later they get a dream, don't go back the same way you came, Herod's looking for you, I think the wise men knew as soon as they encountered Herod, this guy is bad news. So they continue their journey until they get to this miraculous moment. The star stops over the house, and Matthew tells us they're filled with joy. They have found what they're looking for, except they don't know yet what they're looking for. This is how it is with God. When we're wise and when we know what we don't know and what we're searching for, and where is it that we are being led by something as crazy as a star, and we say yes, and we start out on these journeys, and we can feel ourselves maybe getting a little bit closer, and our divine GPS tells us this is the place, and we wonder, what am I going to see? What am I looking for? And they know that what has happened is about to transform their lives and the world. But they don't know quite yet what it is until they enter in to that house. This experience is not just something that is in Matthew's gospel and that the Magi have. It's an experience that we all have when we allow ourselves to be wise. It's life-changing. It's a little frightening. It sends us on journeys where we don't know where we're going, we don't know what we're looking for, and we're not really sure when we found it. But when we do, it changes our lives. We have to be willing to enter into that much ambiguity and wondering and trusting that God is making a way for us. And then epiphanies happen. And it doesn't just happen on January 6th. Epiphanies happen whenever it is that our journey and God's love intersect each other. There's a poet and author, T.S. Eliot. He spent a good chunk of his life searching and journeying and looking, writing some really great existentialist poetry, and wondering, where is meaning and God in the midst of a wasteland? Where is the purpose of life in community with others? He was on a journey and he kept pressing forward. And then he has this conversion experience. He became an Anglican. I think God was leading him. Found himself right into England and discovered Anglican Church, discovered a liturgical and theological practice that spoke to him, discovered what his heart was seeking, but also discovered the ambiguity and the complexity of when God offers up that Christ child, it changes your life. You can't go home again. You can't discover your old self. Because once the Magi open the door and enter into the house and witness the child and Mary, they're going to have to go home by another way. Their lives are completely changed. Eliot even wrote a poem about it. And in his poem, the Magi, usually when you see images of the Magi traveling and the ones that we had brought up here at the beginning of the service, it looks like they're having a good trip. They're riding on camels, and they've got lots of fancy robes, and they're carrying their gifts, and it looks that they're kind of well-fed and tended along the way. It's not like that in this poem. A cold coming we had of it. Just the worst time of year for such a journey, such a long journey. The ways deep and the weather sharp, the very dead of winter. And the camels, galled, sore-footed, refractory, lying down in the melting snow. There were times we regretted the summer palaces on slopes, the terraces, and the silken girls bringing sherbet. Then the camel men cursing and grumbling and running away and wanting their liquor and women. and the night fires going out, and the lack of shelters, and the cities hostile, and the towns unfriendly, and the villages dirty and charging high prices. A hard time we had of it. At the end, we preferred to travel all night, sleeping in snatches with the voices singing in our ears, saying that this was all folly. Then at dawn, we came down to a temperate valley, wet below the snow line, smelling of vegetation, with a running stream and a watermill beating the darkness, and 3 trees on the low sky, and an old white horse galloped away in the meadow. Then we came to a tavern with vine leaves over the lintel, 6 hands at an open door dicing for pieces of silver, and feet kicking the empty wineskins. But there was no information. So we continued, and arriving at evening, not a moment too soon, finding the place. It was, you might say, satisfactory. All this was a long time ago, I remember. And I would do it again, but set down, this. We were led all that way for birth or death. There was a birth, certainly. We had evidence, and no doubt I had seen birth and death, but had thought that they were different. This birth was hard and bitter agony for us, like death, our death. And we returned to our places, these kingdoms, but no longer at ease here, in the old dispensation, with an alien people clutching their gods. I should be glad of another death. Matthew doesn't tell us what happens to the Magi when they go home by another way. But you all know, if you're a wise person and your life is transformed, you're not the same. Your home is no longer your home. Your life has changed, and you have to figure out how the transformation that's happened on the inside is going to match the life on the outside. And so the Magi, journeying with Christ inside them, this Christ they didn't even know that they were going to find, this babe that is going to transform the world just like he transformed them in the moment that they witnessed how God is bringing together life and death and inviting us into an embrace of unconditional love. These Magi go back to the east, and they live in the uncomfortable tension of a world that does not know Christ and their own lives that have been radically transformed by Christ. And Eliot, well, always the existentialist, paints a picture that has some tragedy and some sorrow and some grief at the difficulty of returning home, but finding that your own kinfolk are no longer your kin. An alien people, he calls them, clutching at their gods. That when we have a journey that takes us to an epiphany, a radically life-changing experience, there's a death of our old self. And when we get out of the house where we have witnessed Mary and Joseph and the babe, we are reborn new people. And we spend the rest of our life reorienting ourselves to a whole new set of stars, to a whole new world that acknowledges and recognizes that what leads us and guides us is this transformed experience. It might even start us talking to others about what has happened to us. They might notice that we don't quite fit anymore. As we enter into this Epiphany season, how have you been transformed? What in your life doesn't fit? How do you need to go home another way? Where is it that there needs to be some new space carved out? Where is it that you need to share the transformation that's happened within so that others might come to know and celebrate and enter into that house where the Christ child has been born? This is the journey of Epiphany. You might have the life-changing experience in one moment, but you'll spend the rest of your life journeying back home again. and finding the ways in which God is carving out for you a place in this world where you dwell with Christ and Christ dwells with you. Amen.